Ever get that feeling? You know, like a little shiver kind of runs down your spine.
Yeah.
When you realize something's just not quite right. Even in the most familiar places, it's like, picture a perfectly pleasant town,
Yeah.
right? But secrets are hiding behind all those white picket fences.
Ooh.
That's the kind of world we're diving into today with all good people here.
Okay.
It's a brand new mystery novel. And we're going to take a close look at the setup, how it all starts. In the first chapter, actually, we've got a recording of the author herself reading it.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
So the story takes place in 1994 in Waukera, Indiana.
Walker.
Walker. Sounds peaceful enough, right?
Yeah, it does.
But right away, you get this sense that something's like lurking beneath the surface.
Yeah, I get that. Like that calm before the storm.
Exactly. Exactly. And then we meet Chrissy Jacobs. She's a farmer's wife. And boy, is she aware of the power of small town gossip.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, she practically lives and breathes it.
Yeah, it's more than just being aware of gossip, though. I think Chrissy's deeply invested in maintaining her family's reputation, even if it means, conforming to whatever the town expects.
Oh, interesting.
Which begs the question, what is she so afraid of?
Mm-hmm. And then, bam,
Hmm.
the story gets into high gear when Chrissy discovers a message scrawled on her kitchen wall. But it's not just any message.
Oh.
It's written in blood-red letters.
Oh, no.
And it says, screw your family. That B word is gone. This is what you get.
Whoa. Now, imagine finding that in your own home. Talk about chilling. But what really struck me was Chrissy's initial reaction. It's not fear,
Right.
not for her safety or even shock.
Right.
It's fear of what the neighbors will think.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's so true. She even says in the chapter, what would Mrs. Henderson from across the street say if she saw this?
It's like the social fallout is more terrifying to her than the actual threat.
Yeah.
This detail, I think, reveals so much about Chrissy. It suggests this deep-seated insecurity and this need for, external validation. It makes you wonder what happened in her past that made her so reliant on the town's approval.
Yeah. Adding another layer to the mystery is the fact that Chrissy's daughter, January, was murdered years ago. It's a cold case that a journalist is now trying to solve. Could this message be connected to January's death?
Ooh.
Who would want to torment Chrissy like this?
The author, she masterfully layers these elements of suspense, making us question everything. Is the message a threat? Is it a warning? Or something else entirely? And how does the journalist's return to Waukera factor into all of this?
And get this. The author promises twists and turns throughout the book.
Oh, no.
So buckle up, listeners, because we are in for one wild ride.
I love that. What's fascinating to me is how she uses the town of Waukera itself as a character. She describes the gossip mill as a force of nature, capable of distorting truth and ruining lives.
Yes. It's almost like Waukera has a personality of its own, one that can be both charming and sinister.
Right.
It's a reminder that even the most idyllic settings can harbor dark secrets.
Absolutely. This adds a whole new dimension to the story, doesn't it? It's not just about solving a crime. It's about understanding this community, like the dynamics of this community and how they contribute to what's unfolding.
Okay, so we have Chrissy, who is clearly hiding something in a town where rumors spread like wildfire. Add in a cryptic message, a murdered daughter, and a journalist digging up the past.
It's a recipe for a page-turner.
It is.
And the author's writing style just pulls you right in. For example, the way she describes the message on the wall, blood red, those oversized letters.
Yeah.
It's so vivid. It's visceral.
Right, you can practically picture it.
Yes.
And the way she builds tension through those short, choppy sentences.
Yes.
It creates such a sense of urgency and dread.
It's like she's putting us right there in Chrissy's shoes, experiencing the shock and horror alongside her.
Yeah, and that's what makes this deep dive so exciting.
I agree.
We're not just reading the story, we're dissecting it, peeling back the layers to understand how the author crafts such a compelling mystery.
Exactly. It's about appreciating the craft, the deliberate choices the author makes to keep us engaged and on the edge of our seats.
Speaking of keeping us engaged, I have to say, listening to the author read this chapter aloud added a whole new dimension to the story.
Absolutely. Her voice, her pacing brought the words to life. You could hear the fear, the uncertainty in Chrissy's voice, adding to the overall tension.
It really enhanced the emotional impact of the story, didn't it?
It did.
It made you feel even more connected to the characters and the unfolding drama.
And it reminds us of the power of audio storytelling, the way a skilled narrator can transport us into the world of the book.
I'm already wondering how the full audiobook will sound. The author mentioned she won't be narrating it herself,
Yeah.
but has hired professional voice actors.
Oh, that's a great point. I'm curious to see if having different voices for each character will enhance the listening experience even further.
We should definitely revisit that. Once the audiobook is out, we could even do a follow-up, comparing the experience of reading versus listening to the story.
Now, that's a deep dive I'd love to be a part of. But before we get ahead of ourselves.
Right, right. Let's get back to this gripping first chapter. We've talked about the setting, the characters, that suspenseful tone. But what do you think are some of the larger themes at play here?
Well, the most obvious one is secrets. I mean, the entire story revolves around what people are hiding, both individually and as a community.
It's almost like the town of Walker itself is built on a foundation of secrets. And those secrets have a way of bubbling to the surface, don't they?
Exactly. And then there's the theme of appearances versus reality. Nothing is quite what it seems in Wakara. We see this in Chrissy's obsession with her family's reputation, even when faced with a genuine threat.
It's like she's more concerned with maintaining a facade than with confronting the truth. And that makes me wonder, what is she willing to sacrifice to protect her secrets?
That's a question that will likely drive much of the conflict in the story. And it's a theme that resonates with all of us, doesn't it? We all have secrets, and sometimes we go to great lengths to protect them.
It's a very human dilemma. This struggle between what we want to believe and what we know deep down might be true. And that's what makes All Good People Here so compelling. It explores these universal themes in a suspenseful and thought-provoking way.
Absolutely. And I think that's why we're both so hooked on this story. It's not just entertainment. It's an exploration of human nature and the complexities of life in a small town.
And we're just getting started, folks. Stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into All Good People Here in the next part of this episode.
You won't want to miss it. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the deep dive so you can join us for all of our fascinating explorations.
Now let's take a closer look at the structure of this first chapter. How does the author use specific writing techniques to draw us in and set the stage for the mystery?
Welcome back to our deep dive into All Good People Here. We left off talking about the structure of the first chapter and how the author, really skillfully sets the stage for this captivating mystery.
Yeah, one thing that really stood out to me was how the author uses foreshadowing, right from the start, to create this sense of unease. For example, she describes Wakara as having a picture-perfect facade that hinted at something darker lurking beneath.
That's such a great observation. It's subtle, but it plants a seed of doubt in the reader's mind. We're led to believe that the seemingly idyllic town, it might not be as innocent as it appears.
Exactly. And then there's the description of Chrissy's home. It's described as like immaculately clean, almost sterile, which to me creates a sense of unease rather than comfort.
Yeah, it's like the author is suggesting that Chrissy's trying too hard to control her environment, perhaps to suppress something unpleasant, like almost as if she's trying to erase any trace of, imperfection or chaos.
And that perfectly sets us up for the shock of finding that blood-red message on her pristine kitchen wall.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a stark contrast that shatters the illusion of order and control.
Speaking of that message, I think it's worth taking a closer look at the language used.
Okay.
The author could have just written, like, your family is in danger.
Right.
But instead, she chose much harsher language, vulgar language, really. Screw your family. That B word is gone. This is what you get.
It's definitely not your typical threatening message. It feels like much more personal, fueled by anger, by resentment. It makes you wonder about the history between the writer and Chrissy's family.
Right. And the use of that word, B word, it's particularly interesting. It's dehumanizing, suggesting a deep-seated hatred. Who would use such language to describe someone, especially in a threat?
Yeah. It's clearly meant to provoke and intimidate, but it also reveals something about the writer. This is someone who's not afraid to cross boundaries and inflict emotional pain.
Exactly. And then there's that cryptic phrase, that B word is gone. We still don't know for sure who it refers to, but the most likely candidate seems to be Chrissy's murdered daughter, January.
Right. If that's the case, it adds a whole new layer of cruelty to the message. It's like the writer is taunting Chrissy with the loss of her child, reopening old wounds.
It's a chilling thought, and it makes us question the writer's motives, right? Is this about revenge, or is there something more sinister at play?
And let's not forget about the journalist, who's back in town to investigate January's murder. Could the message be a warning to deter her from digging into the past?
That's certainly a possibility. I mean, the timing of the message coinciding with her return can't be a coincidence. It suggests that someone is watching, someone who doesn't want the truth to come out.
It's like the town of Walkera is a pressure cooker, and the arrival of the journalist has turned up the heat.
Ooh.
Secrets are starting to boil over,
Yeah.
and someone is desperate to keep a lid on things.
It's a brilliant setup, and I can't wait to see how the author, like, how she continues to weave these threads of suspense throughout the story.
Me too. Now, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about Chrissy's reaction to the message. It's so fascinating how her first thought is about what the neighbors will think, not about her family's safety.
Yeah. So it's such a telling detail. It suggests that she's more concerned with maintaining a certain image than with confronting the reality of the situation.
Right. She even tries to scrub the message off the wall
I know.
before her husband sees it. It's like she's more afraid of social judgment than the actual threat.
And this brings us back to that question of, what Chrissy is hiding. What is she so desperate to protect that she would prioritize social standing over her family's well-being?
It's like there's a hidden story lurking beneath the surface,
Yeah.
a past that Chrissy is trying to bury. And I have a feeling that the message on the wall is just the tip of the iceberg.
It's almost as if the past is a ghost that haunts the present, influencing Chrissy's every decision. And I think the author is cleverly using this theme of the past to build suspense and keep us guessing.
I completely agree. Now, let's talk a bit about the author's background.
Yeah.
As a podcast host, I think it's interesting how she chose to release the first chapter as an audio recording.
Yeah, it's a unique approach, and I think it speaks to her understanding of the power of voice to draw listeners in. After all, she's experienced firsthand how a well-crafted story can captivate an audience.
Right, and it makes me wonder if her podcasting experience has influenced her writing style. Like the dialogue in the novel feels very natural, very realistic, almost like you're listening to a conversation unfold.
That's a great observation. It's possible that her experience with audio storytelling has given her a keen ear for dialogue and a knack for pacing a story to keep the listener engaged.
And speaking of pacing, I think it's worth mentioning how the author alternates between, short, punchy sentences and longer, more descriptive passages. It creates a nice balance of tension and reflection.
Absolutely. The short sentences, they create a sense of urgency,
Yeah.
while the longer passages allow us to delve deeper into the character's thoughts and emotions.
It's like she's giving us a roller coaster ride of emotions,
Yeah.
expertly guiding us through the highs and lows of the story.
And that's what makes All Good People Here so engaging. It's a multi-layered story that keeps us guessing, makes us feel, and leaves us wanting more.
I'm completely hooked. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to go back to the audio recording of the author reading the first chapter.
Yes. It was such a treat to hear her bring the story to life with her own voice. I particularly loved how she subtly changed her tone and pacing to reflect the different characters' personalities.
It was like she was giving us a sneak peek
Yeah.
into the characters' inner worlds, adding depth and nuance to their portrayals.
And I think it speaks to her talent as a storyteller, her ability to embody the characters and make them feel real to the listener.
It definitely made me eager to hear the full audiobook,
Yeah.
especially since she's using professional voice actors to portray the different characters.
I'm curious to see how they'll interpret the characters and bring their own unique voices to the story. It could potentially elevate the listening experience to a whole new level.
That's a great point. But for now, let's shift gears and talk a bit about the genre of mystery itself. What are some of the key elements that make a mystery novel truly gripping?
Well, one of the most important elements is suspense. A good mystery needs to keep the reader constantly guessing, wondering what's going to happen next.
Right, and to achieve that suspense, the author needs to create a sense of uncertainty and danger. We need to believe that the characters are in real peril and that the stakes are high.
Exactly. And then there's the element of the puzzle. A good mystery will present the reader with a series of clues and red herrings, challenging them to piece together the truth.
It's like a mental game between the author and the reader, a battle of wits to see who can outsmart the other.
And the best mysteries are the ones that keep you guessing until the very end, surprising you with twists and turns that you never saw coming.
And All Good People Here seems to have all of these elements in spades. A compelling setting, complex characters, a shocking inciting incident, and the promise of unexpected twists.
You've summed it up perfectly. And I think one of the things that makes this particular mystery so intriguing is the way the author blends those traditional elements with a more psychological approach.
I completely agree. It's not just about solving a crime. It's about understanding the characters' motivations, their
Yeah.
secrets, and the psychological impact of living in a town like Wakara.
It's a mystery that delves into the dark side of human nature, exploring themes of, guilt, shame, and the lengths people will go to protect themselves and their reputations.
And that makes it a story that resonates long after you finish reading it.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to another key element of mystery, the ending.
Ah, yes, the moment of truth, where all the secrets are revealed and the puzzle pieces fall into place.
But a truly satisfying ending, it goes beyond just revealing the culprit,
Yeah.
doesn't it? It needs to tie up all the loose ends, provide closure,
Mm.
and leave the reader with
Yeah.
a sense of satisfaction.
Right, and sometimes the most effective endings are the ones that challenge our expectations,
Yeah.
leaving us with lingering questions
Yeah.
and a sense of unease.
Exactly. And in All Good People Here, the author has promised plenty of twists and turns. So I have a feeling the ending will be anything but predictable.
I'm both excited and a little bit nervous to see how it all unfolds.
Me too.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that the author will deliver an ending that is both surprising and thought-provoking.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive. We've talked about suspense, foreshadowing, the language of the threatening message, the role of the past, the author's background as a podcast host, the elements of a good mystery, and the importance of a satisfying ending. What else do we need to consider as we continue our exploration?
Well, I think it's important to note that while the first chapter focuses, heavily on Chrissy's perspective, the author has hinted at a larger cast of characters who will likely play significant roles in the unfolding mystery.
Yes, we've caught glimpses of Chrissy's husband, her friends, the journalist, and even some of the townspeople. I'm curious to see how their stories intertwine and how their perspectives will shape our understanding of the events.
It's like we're getting a panoramic view of Wakara, slowly piecing together a mosaic of perspectives and motivations.
And I have a feeling that as we get to know these other characters, we'll uncover even more secrets and lies that will further complicate the mystery.
Absolutely. And with that, I think we've reached a good stopping point for this part of our deep dive.
I agree. Stay tuned for the final part of this episode, where we'll delve even deeper into the mysteries of Walker, Indiana, and explore the larger themes that make All Good People Here such a captivating read.
We'll see you there.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been kind of dissecting this mystery novel, All Good People Here, and I gotta say, I'm even more intrigued now than when we started.
It really is like peeling an onion, isn't it? Every layer we uncover reveals another question, another potential secret hiding in Wakara.
And speaking of Walker, let's talk about the role of small town settings
Yeah.
in mysteries. Why do you think they're so popular as a backdrop for these kinds of stories?
Well, I think there's this inherent tension in the idea of a small town, On the surface, it's all like close-knit community, shared values.
Right.
But underneath that, there's often this darker side, this sense that everyone's like watching, judging.
It's like the town itself becomes a character almost, like a Greek chorus, commenting on the actions of the individuals, and that collective awareness can be both comforting and suffocating.
Precisely. And in All Good People Here, the author doesn't just use Wakara as a backdrop. She actively weaves it into the narrative, making it a source of both Chrissy's anxiety and the reader's suspicion.
Oh, totally. Remember the author described the gossip mill? It moved with the relentlessness of the seasons, churning and twisting until truth was indistinguishable from fiction.
That line really stuck with me too. It creates this sense that the town itself has a will of its own, like a power to shape events regardless of individual intentions.
Makes you wonder if anyone in Walker can truly escape the weight of its collective memory and judgment.
And that brings us back to Chrissy's internal conflict, doesn't it? She's so desperate to to control how she's perceived by the town, even if it means ignoring a very real threat.
It's like she's trapped in a prison of her own making. You
Mm.
know, she's built her life around maintaining this image of respectability, and now she's terrified of it all, like crumbling down.
Which makes her such a fascinating character to analyze. Is she willfully blind to the danger? Or is she simply paralyzed by that fear of social isolation?
I think it's a bit of both. Remember how she reacted when she found that message on the wall?
Oh,
Her first instinct was to like scribble it off, to erase the evidence before anyone else could see it.
exactly. It really highlights this deep-seated need for control, this belief that if she can just maintain the facade, everything will be all right.
But of course, as we know from countless mystery novels, secrets have a way of coming to light. And I suspect that Chrissy's attempts to bury the past are only going to make things worse.
Oh, absolutely. The truth has a way of finding its own, path to the surface, no matter how hard we try to suppress it.
Speaking of truth, I'm really curious to see how the journalist's investigation plays out. Will she be the catalyst that finally brings Chrissy's secrets to light?
That's definitely a possibility. But I also wonder if the journalist herself has her own secrets, her own reasons for being drawn to this particular cold case.
Ooh, that's an interesting thought. The author has hinted at a troubled past for the journalist. So perhaps she sees something of herself in January's story.
It could add a whole new layer of complexity to their interactions, especially if they end up working together to uncover the truth.
And that's what I love about a well-crafted mystery. It keeps you guessing, constantly shifting your perspective and challenging your assumptions.
It really is like a mental workout,
Yeah.
forcing us to engage with the story on multiple levels.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to revisit that audio recording of the author reading the first chapter. We talked earlier about her experience as a podcast host and how that might have influenced her writing style.
Yes, and I think it's particularly evident in the way she builds suspense through sound, even though we were just listening to words on a page. There were moments that felt incredibly tense and atmospheric.
Oh, I completely agree. Remember the description of Chrissy walking through her house, checking the locks? The author read that passage so slowly, with these deliberate pauses that heighten the sense of unease.
It's like she was allowing the silence to speak volumes,
Right.
creating this chilling anticipation of something bad about to happen.
And that masterful use of pacing and tone just makes me even more excited to listen to the full audiobook. It's like getting to experience the story on a whole new sensory level.
Absolutely. And I have a feeling the professional voice actors will bring their own unique talents to the project, further enriching the listening experience.
Well, I think it's safe to say that All Good People Here has exceeded our expectations.
I completely agree. It's a captivating mystery that blends suspense, psychological insight and vivid storytelling to create an unforgettable reading experience.
If you're looking for a book that will keep you on the edge of your seat, challenge your perceptions and leave you thinking long after you've turned the final page, then All Good People Here it's a must read.
And be sure to check out the audiobook too. It's a fantastic way to immerse yourself in the story and appreciate the nuances of the author's craft.
And with that, we wrap up our deep dive into All Good People Here. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
We hope you enjoyed it. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the Deep Dive for more fascinating explorations of books, ideas, and the world around us.